So, what are the 4 decisions that you need to make to know if you're ready to study for an MBA? Well, the first of them is around commitment. An MBA is a huge commitment in terms of time, first of all, and this is time in the classroom, whether it's face-to-face and to some degree virtually as well. But outside of the actual classroom, you can estimate probably around 15 hours a week of study on your own to prepare for those classes, to prepare for your exams, and to really capture the learning. So it's a huge commitment of time, but it's also a huge commitment in terms of energy. All of this study combined with all the other things going on in your life, both personally and if you're working at the same time, clearly professionally. But the third area in terms of commitment is around money. MBA programs vary quite dramatically in terms of how much they cost, and certainly the admissions department will give you a clear sense of how much this costs, both in terms of fees and all the other things like books, etc. And to some degree, there will be some travel there for going on field trips, for example. So there is a commitment in terms of money as well there that is an obvious commitment. But this really leads to the second decision, which is payback. Now, there are some studies here to say, what is the payback, the economic payback on your MBA? And certainly the classic answer here from one study is the payback here will be in 4 years. So 4 years after your MBA, you will be up on your investment. And from an economic point of view, that's a pretty compelling proposition. But there is an important point here. Firstly, where is your salary right now? And crucially, are you looking to stay in the same field or are you looking to change? Because there are certain professions that when you move into them, they can actually give you a huge bump in your salary, particularly in consulting, in financial services, or technology. Those are the 3 areas where you can really estimate this bump in terms of an increase in salary after your MBA most effectively. And really all of the league tables for different MBA programs really look at this issue of not just who's got jobs after their MBA, but what is the salary typically a few years after your MBA. So you can get a sense here of it, but clearly you need to be very aware of the fact these are averages and there's a huge variability about how much of an increase you get in your salary. So if the second decision is around payback, the third one is around timing, because is this the right time for you to do an MBA? And there is always this issue here. Not just around, is it the right time? There's also that issue that it raises around commitment. Because a bit like walking to the end of the diving board, looking down, and there's that voice in your head that says, oh, I'm not sure this is the right time. And there's often these excuses about maybe I shouldn't do this because, and sometimes there can be that anxiety there that can lead us to struggle to make the decision that will be in our best long-term interest. But in terms of timing, there's a number of issues to really bear in mind there. The first of them is the support structures you've got around you. Because if you do an MBA, clearly you'll be taking time away from your other activities and your other relationships. So making sure you've got enough support if you're in a long-term relationship, if you have family, or even just a significant other, that are these people really going to support you in this decision? So having that support structure is hugely important to really thinking about whether this is the right time for you to do an MBA. The other issue in terms of timing that I really suggest you reflect on is, do you want to do this earlier in your career, or do you want to wait until you've got more experience? Because both of these have very compelling arguments for them. Let's focus on the second one here, which is waiting to have more experience. Certainly, as somebody who is teaching MBAs, it's always great when you've got people in the classroom who can say, yes, professor, this is all very well, but in my experience, and they bring experiences from their organization, from their sector, from their country. And so there's more grit in the oyster there to really build the pearl from, because they've got more experience to bring. And so you can really relate what you're hearing in the classroom to your actual experiences. So there's a real argument to be made for why you should really delay this and do it when you've got more experience. However, there's also a very strong argument here, which is get it done early. Because As you get more senior, it gets harder. The more demands of you, it can be harder to get the time away. And also, as you get further on in your career, the probability of you having more personal commitments that make time away for study harder is also going to be an issue for many people. So on balance here, you're going to have to make a decision about, do you want to get in there early and really get this done, so then you can really get that acceleration in your career, or do you really want to wait? And there'll be so many factors that really go into helping you make that decision, but that's the third decision you're going to need to make. And the final thing here is the real issue here of, why are you doing an MBA? Now, it's important to say that whilst clearly I'm biased and I think an MBA can be incredibly useful to a wide number of people, as I've talked about in other videos, it is important to say that the MBA is not the answer to everything. It's not a silver bullet. And there may be people saying to you, both professionally and from your personal life, you should do an MBA. This is something that will be very useful for you. And they may be saying that for very valid reasons, because they know you and understand you very well. But given the other three decisions I've talked about in this session, you need to be very, very clear because of the commitment. Is this going to give you a payback? Is now the right time? The fourth one here about what really is the question that this MBA is an answer to. That's something you need to think about very carefully, because if it is simply, well, I'd really like to learn a bit more about business, well, this is a very large solution to a rather small problem. And there are a whole bunch of shorter courses that you can do. If, for example, you're looking to develop your experience in finance or in leadership or in strategy, these are issues that you can really focus on with much shorter interventions. So the question of what is the answer that an MBA provides for me is one that everyone who does an MBA really has to think about. And it may be that the question you're really looking at is, what should I do with the rest of my career? And that's a perfectly valid question to ask yourself. And one of the benefits of an MBA, clearly, is it does give you a taste of many different aspects of business, as well as access to your fellow students, where you can really learn about what their experiences are in their particular field that will help you really think about it. So 4 decisions here. How much commitment are you prepared to make in terms of time, energy, and money? What's going to be the payback based on the investment, the ROI? What is that really going to look like for you? Rather than just looking at the averages. The third thing is about timing. Do you have the real social support there? And do you want to get this early done in your career, or really wait until you've got more experience and can really get more context? And finally, what is the question that the MBA is an answer to for you?